for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Any additions to the agenda, Kathy?
Mr. Chair, I just have a correction to the hospital warrants amount, which the amount should be $612,521.59. And I did pass out a revised agenda this morning. And then also the addition of resolution 59-28-22. The objection to the Minnesota Department of Human Services selection of participating health plans under other business. And then also 2 job description approvals, which will get added under my personnel items. And then I also just wanted to note that Steve is participating via phone, so he is here on speakerphone.
Okay. And then we have the add-on warrants too this morning, commissioner warrants.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, with those updates and revisions, I will move the agenda.
Support. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the consent agenda. Minutes of the 6/28/22 meeting, special meeting of 2/4/22. The auditor warrants of 7/1/22, 7/8, and 7/11. The commissioner warrants plus the add-on today of $60,594.06, and the hospital warrants of $612,521.59, and approve the June treasurer's report.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval.
I'll support that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Nick?
Actually, Cody Brand with MnDOT is here. Can he go first?
Sure. Good morning, Cody.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Cody Brand. I'm here from Minnesota Department of Transportation to go over the findings of an intersection control evaluation report that was performed. So we were requested by the city and the county to look at the intersection of Highway 30 and 8th Avenue on the west side of town, to look at the appropriate intersection control there. And what we refer to as intersection control is, whether it should be a 2-way stop with a through condition, an all-way stop. Roundabouts are also considered intersection control. And then a traffic signal or a stoplight are kind of the common things that we would look at for a 2-way roadway like that condition. And so I'm going to start with kind of the findings, which are on the last page, on page 10, and then I'll go back from there and talk about how we came to the conclusion that we did. And so this was a report that was put together by a consultant, Stonebrook Engineering, in coordination with MnDOT, the county, and the city. And so the recommendation is that really the intersection should stay as is, a 2-way stop, so stop on the side street with Highway 30 as a through condition. We did look at all-way stop and traffic signal, and there are warrants that are established in the Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is a document that we have to follow for any type of intersection control. It is also a federal document that Minnesota has adapted and made a couple of changes to specific to Minnesota, but it is largely based on federal requirements as well. And so the warrants that are laid out for always stop and signal warrants are consistent across the federal document as well. So in order to implement an always stop or a signal, we have to look at those warrants and see if the intersection meets the warrants. And I'll go into a little bit more depth on that later on. But the intersection did not meet the warrants with 2022 traffic volumes and also was not projected to meet warrants under 2042 traffic volumes. We also looked at a roundabout at this location, and there are not established warrants for a roundabout, but generally Minnesota uses always stop warrants or signal warrants to also warrant a roundabout. So if either of those were met, then a roundabout would also be considered warranted for a traffic control there. So we, through the analysis, recommended leaving the intersection as is due to not meeting warrants. Also, there does not appear to be a site-specific crash issue that needs to be addressed. And the intersection is operating at an acceptable level. And what we mean by that is we look at something called level of service, and it looks at the average delay of all users going through the intersection, and it grades it on A through F depending on how much delay there is, and typically anything operating above a level of service C or better is considered acceptable operation. So I'm going to kind of go back then to the beginning and just walk through the details of how we got to that conclusion. So the page 1 talks about the study purpose, which is just some general language talking about what an intersection control evaluation is, identifies the study location and the alternatives that were looked at, which is the existing condition, always stop control, signal control, and single lane roundabout. On the page 3 that titled chapter 2, that identifies what the existing intersection characteristics are. So it just describes that it's a 2-lane roadway, 30 mile per hour, speed limit on all legs of the approach. CSA 15 and 8th Avenue are the stop condition there. There are pedestrian ramps currently and crosswalks on the north and south approach. There are not crosswalks striped at Highway 30, although that does not mean that it's not a crossing condition. There's not always crosswalks at every pedestrian ramp, that it is still a appropriate crossing condition, but due to the proximity of the RRFB, the rapid rectangular flashing beacon that's installed a little further west towards Coburn's, we'd like to try to funnel people there if that's an acceptable spot for them to cross to get to their destination, since it is a more protected crossing. The next section looks at the existing traffic volumes. So Highway 30 has an ADT of approximately 5,400 on the east side, so the more in-town segment, and then 3,850 on the west side. CSA 15 had a traffic volume of 2,600 vehicles on the north leg and 1,550 vehicles on the south leg. And what we do there is these traffic volumes are recorded on an annual basis on the trunk highway system and every couple of years on the county road system by MnDOT. We have set locations where we take these counts, and so that's where that data came from. And then we also did set up cameras to look at the actual turning movements, so not just how many vehicles are at a specific location, but how many are turning in each direction. And that's what you can see kind of displayed below in a figure 2 there. And so that's needed to look at the actual warrants. We don't just look at how much vehicle traffic is going through, but we look at the turning volume as well, because that plays into how much delay there is, pending whether someone's turning left and has to wait for oncoming traffic and wait for a gap in traffic. So that was collected in February of 2022 to perform those warrant analysis. Then in section 2.3, we did also conduct a speed study because there was some concern brought forth on the travel speeds near the high school, and actually, I guess now elementary school there as well. And we do have a school speed limit at that location of 30 miles per hour. The posted speed limit to the west of town raises to 60 just beyond Coburn's. And so typically a speed study isn't necessarily part of an intersection control evaluation, but it was brought up as a concern, so we wanted to verify what the speeds are out there and see if there's some other measures that need to be looked at. And we collected speed samples at a couple different times throughout the day when the school speed limit was enforced, or was active, I should say. And then also when it was not active. And so starting on the west side of town, near the school entrance, was titled as location 1 on this map. During the times when the school speed limit was not active, we had a average or 85th percentile speed of 56 miles per hour, so a little bit beneath the posted speed limit. When the flashers were on, we had a 85th percentile of 37 miles per hour, which is slightly higher than that school speed limit when flashing, but is actually pretty, it's better than what we would expect. Typically with a school speed limit, we do not lower, or we do not recommend lowering the speed by more than 15 and up to 20 miles per hour, and so this is lowered by 30 miles per hour there. To get compliance of a 30 mile per hour speed limit is going to be very difficult when it's open and people are typically driving it at 56. To get them to reduce to 30 is going to be a bit of a challenge. So we were actually pretty happy with what we saw for the results of travelers when that school speed limit was active. We found similar results then at location 2 with the flashers on 36 miles per hour in the westbound direction as you're leaving town. And then we did record in town on both sides of the intersection with an 85th percentile of 33 miles per hour and 32 miles per hour. So we are finding that vehicles are traveling near the posted speed limit out there. So then section 3 looks at the future traffic, and this is what we look at for those 2042 traffic volumes. Just over in the very right-hand column, you can see what the traffic is projected to be in 2042. It's 5,000 to 6,000 on Highway 30 and between 2,000 to 3,000 on CSAH 15. That's seeing a growth rate of anywhere from 0.5% to 1.2%, which is pretty standard for the trunk highway system in rural Minnesota. Generally, we're around 0.5 to maybe 0.75%. Very rarely do we get much above 1% growth in traffic volume. So that does match up with what we would expect. So then again, you'll see another figure 4. It's basically the same as figure 2, except with traffic growth applied to those numbers. So that's, again, goes back to the warrants. We look at the amount of vehicles that are turning. I should mention this is peak hour movements. So when you see numbers of, in the hundreds or beneath 100, that's how many vehicles are recorded in 1 hour time frame. We do that in 15-minute increments and select the greatest 15-minute increment. So it could be 8:15 to 9:15, but it is a 1 hour increment. And then what's shown in parentheses would be the peak hour in the PM. So we look at AM and PM peak hours when we're looking at warrant analysis. The next section on crash data records, we looked at the last 5 years worth of crashes out there, and I'm just gonna jump down to table 2 instead of going through all the text there, and table 2 is on page 6. So at this intersection, we have an observed crash rate of 0.16, and so that's per million entering vehicles. So there'd be 0.16 crashes out of a million vehicles traveling through that intersection. The critical crash rate is established at 0.43, and the critical crash rate is what we would establish as a statistically significant crash rate. That's once the crash rate would get over the critical crash rate, that's when we start to look at maybe something at the intersection is contributing to those crashes. So if the observed crash rate is beneath that critical crash rate, it is not a high priority crash location for us. It's showing that the intersection is operating within expected values for crash rates. We know that crashes are going to happen. They are somewhat random. Once it advances over that critical crash rate, then we have to start looking at, is there something at the intersection that's causing these crashes? Maybe there's too much traffic for the intersection type. Maybe there's speeds that could be reduced to make it safer, visibility concerns, those sorts of things. So what that comes out to then is a critical index of 0.38. That's just the observed crash rate divided by the critical crash rate. So it's another way of looking at it quickly, and anything with a critical index over 1 would mean that that observed crash rate is greater than the critical crash rate. Anything below 1 means that it's operating within what we would deem acceptable conditions. So that's generally how we look at prioritizing our intersections for safety improvements, is looking for those intersections that have a critical index above 1. Any questions on crashes or traffic volumes?
Mr. Chair, if I may, on traffic volumes, and thank you. You did say you did the survey February of 22. That was one of the questions, one of the notes I made as we went through it. And you did look at time of day and peak volumes. So you have recognized the fact with the school out there, we've had increased traffic and so forth. And I also realize, February may not be the peak time with different athletic events and so forth out there. That's when it seems to get really, really bad. And I also realize that you cannot design a system for just a handful of days. So I appreciate what you're doing here, and I appreciate that you're being thorough and you're looking at those different things. Is it conceivable to do another study at another period of time where we would have like fall activities out there that I don't know if I can prove it or not, but my feeling is that's when we tend to have more volume of traffic out there is in the fall.
Yeah, we could work with the county on conducting a less formal study than this. I think, with a full out study like this, I want to say that the total contract came out to around $40,000. So it's probably not all that economical to get that sort of information. So it's something that we would want to kind of do locally between MnDOT and the county if we needed to look at traffic volumes at different times of the year.
And I appreciate you taking into account the expense for this. Absolutely, we want to be very prudent about what we do. You also mentioned then visibility. Did you have your recommendations as far as line of sight, especially on the extreme southeast corner of that lot?
Yeah, and I think that will be something that it might actually be in the full report, which we don't have here. But we did look at considerations for improving visibility. And there are some concerns that maybe some improvements could be made as far as, like you mentioned, that southeast lot, there's I believe, a large tree there that is kind of blocking some visibility. The other issue that something that may be an issue is the parking on CASA 15 in front of DARS. There's a lot of, I know that it's a very busy business, and there's a lot of parking along the street there, very close to the intersection. One of the issues with that is I believe that entire parking lot has curb and gutter that's mountable, and there is no clear entrance. And so then there's really nowhere that you can paint yellow because it is all an area that could be driven over. So that's something that could be considered with a future pavement project in the areas, whether you would kind of consolidate that entrance, try to get people into one specific point, and you could potentially look at restricting parking there on that north part of CASA 15.
You mentioned the tree on the southeast also, and again, it's seasonal. With that chain link fence, if we've had a frosty day, it's almost impossible to see through that fence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something that we looked at, and it's a bit of a difficult situation because if we were to, want to open up that intersection, it would require purchasing property there unless the landowner is willing to make changes, on their properties. So without crashes raising to a critical level, we don't think that going through the effort or the negotiation with the landowner of trying to make changes there is going to provide a significant benefit that would outweigh the cost of pursuing that. But it is identified as, an obstacle or an obstruction there with the visibility.
And I realize, of course, compliance with zoning and so forth would be a factor you work with too. So as far as purchasing additional land, are you talking just for line of sight, or are you going back, you're not entering the discussion about roundabout, because that would take a large amount of land.
Right.
Personally, I don't see where that would even be feasible. Is that your opinion as well?
Yeah, and that's probably a good transition kind of into the next segment here.
Thank you.
All right, so then we'll go into section 4, which is alternative analysis, and this is where we start to look at the warrants for roundabouts and all-way stops. And so we look at, there are 8 warrants for a signal, and there's 4 warrants for an all-way stop. We don't look at all of those warrants because some of them are not applicable to the intersection. There's, for instance, warrants with a railroad crossing nearby and certain things like that that are very specific to certain conditions that aren't present. So we don't have all those warrants documented in there, but primarily looking at the warrants that are involving the vehicle volume that we talked about earlier, the traffic volume, and then also the crash experience. And so it was determined that the intersection does not meet signal warrants for traffic volumes in 2022 or 2042, which we had covered. And it also does not meet all-way stop warrants in 2022 or 2042. And so therefore, it would not meet roundabout warrants either, although, like I had mentioned, there's not clear established warrants for roundabouts. It's just general practice that we use the established warrants for signals and stop control for a roundabout. So there are situations where if the crash rate was above that critical crash rate, that we felt that a roundabout could address that, and we didn't meet any of the other warrants, we would consider a roundabout in a select case like that. But generally, we do look at those warrants as justification for installing a different traffic control. So then looking at traffic operations, so this is what we were talking about with the level of service, and you'll kind of see that in 4.2.1. There's a table here that talks about level of service A through F, and this is the amount of delay at the intersection measured in seconds, and it's the average delay of all vehicles. So there are going to be times where at peak hour your delay is greater than 30 seconds, but overall the average delay is what we're looking at for level of service. And so in table 4, we have the level of service presented for the different conditions. On the left-hand column, you can see the different scenarios. So through stop condition, which is the existing condition, always stop, signalized intersection, and single lane roundabout. And then in the 5th column over that says intersection level of service, that is looking at how the intersection would operate overall. So you can see everything that we had looked at has a level of service A. That's the least amount of delay out there. And then in the furthest right column is the worst movement. And so that's generally under the existing condition, that's going to be one of the northbound or southbound directions that has to stop. They're going to have the greatest delay. And so you can see that ranges from a level of service A or B for the southbound direction. And that's 2022 into 2042 still operating at a level of service A and B. So generally we look at this level of service to determine, are there excessive delays that could be another justification for a roundabout, is if it didn't meet any of the other warrants, but we're seeing delays get up to an unacceptable level, that might be a warrant or might be a reason to justify a roundabout. But you can see here under the existing condition, even into our 20-year projection, we are still operating at a level of service A or B, which is deemed acceptable. So then it kind of goes into, on page 8, we've got alternative analysis summary, and it really just summarizes the items that we talked about whether or not warrants were met, the level of service of each of the different conditions. So we have through stop control, and then on the backside, always stop, signal control, and single lane roundabout. So I'm not going to go through all those because it's really just a summary of the earlier items that we discussed. And then with that comes the recommendation of the existing intersection is operating at an acceptable level and within crash rates that we would deem statistically significant for what a standard intersection would operate at. Are there any questions on
I
the...
have a question.
Yes.
There's average intersection delay here. What is a unacceptable average intersection? What time is unacceptable?
Yeah, once we
Leads up to 7 and whatever, but
once we start getting lower than a level of service C, and in some cases even a level of service D may be acceptable, that's when we would start to go from acceptable to unacceptable. And so on that table 3 has the time frames of delay for that. So once we start approaching over 30 seconds of average delay is when we would be considering that to be an unacceptable condition.
30 seconds is unacceptable.
And again, just want to emphasize that is average delay. So there are going to be times where your peak hour, especially during school, is going to be greater than that 30 seconds. But what was kind of touched on earlier is that we do have to design for all 24 hours of the day. And so to address something in a peak hour that is getting above or worse than a level of service C would require us to install, an always stop or a signal. And during the other 22, 23 hours of the day that we're not at peak hour, it's going to operate with a much more significant delay than what a stop condition would on the side streets, because now everybody's having to stop. In the case of an always stop or a signal, everybody's having to wait for that signal to clear out. So that is why we look at the average delay over the entire day instead of focusing solely on that peak hour time frame.
Thank you.
Dan, did you have another question?
Yeah, two items. What appears to be the most frustrating, I don't think there's probably an answer for it, is the staggering of traffic. Is there any way to meter that traffic incoming? It seems so frustrating. You've got a little window, but not enough window. You have people that hesitate, and it really tends to back things up. So without some type of a metering device further to the west, there's nothing you can do to control that traffic coming in, can you?
Yeah, there's really not a good way to get vehicles to queue together other than a traffic signal is really the best way to get vehicles to queue, since they all stop and then release at the same time.
Then my last question then is that of turning lanes. And I realize that gets into driver habits and changing driver concepts. I know myself sitting at that intersection, when people don't square up the corner, when they cut the corner when they're driving, you swear they're going to drive right over the top of you sometimes. So they don't 90 off the corner. Is there anything that can be done as far as painting traffic lanes in there, and is there actually room to paint in a turning lane? You mentioned the parking going north there along Dar's access. Would it be conceivable to add a turning lane in there, or you don't have the property for that?
We let Nick talk on that one. I'm not sure with the parking if I think you might have to restrict parking, but Nick, do you know?
I would think we would have to put a turning lane in there. I would think you'd have to eliminate parking.
And that may not be a bad idea. Again, if you've driven by there, especially on a Saturday or Sunday night,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
I've
pretty.
seen it full.
Yeah.
And I know there's quite a bit of overflow onto the streets. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, currently I don't believe there's, it's all one lane.
Right.
And
But as far as signage, there's nothing to do with signage for turning lanes, painting turning lanes. You don't have the width there to do that.
yeah, without eliminating parking, the best, so you can add signs, but the best way to do it would be to start with striping first to get people into the correct lane. So it could be considered. I don't know the pavement structure out there either, whether the shoulder is the same thickness all the way through as what the main line is, and whether that can support traffic without a change on, and I should clarify, we're talking about on County Road 15 on the side street, not on Highway 30, or are you talking about Highway 30 as well?
Maybe both, if there's room. Maybe both would be nice if you actually had designated turning lanes. That might help with that flow of traffic.
Yeah. We can certainly look at Highway 30. I'm pretty sure 30 to the west of town, the shoulder structure is not the same as
Right.
the through lane, and so that would require reconstructing the shoulder to shift traffic out there. I think 30 east into town is, I know it's a different shoulder structure. I think there's concrete underneath the bituminous surface, and I don't recall if that extends all the way out to the shoulder. So that's something that we can look into, whether the pavement could support it. If the pavement could support it, we could look at adding a designated left turn lane or potentially right turn lane. The next thing that we would then have to look at is if trucks can still make that turn as we're shifting them further from the center of the road.
Because of the radius.
Yeah, so then we'll have to look at radius concerns. And so then what that kind of gets into is if we have to start widening the radius because we're shifting traffic a little bit further from the center of the road and they're making a wider turn, then the impact that has is if we have to make that radius wider, then it starts increasing the crossing distance for a pedestrian. So it does come with a downside that we would have to evaluate. Is it better to keep traffic all in one lane and try to keep the road narrower, or if we widen it, what's that impact to pedestrians trying to cross the road?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment that if you would eliminate traffic or parking in front of Dar's, and then the people would be forced to park further to the north, you could end up having where you'd have, cars parked next to the park, which would make it harder to see if kids were coming out, or, I mean, you could have kind of other issues develop if you push that traffic further to the north.
Unintended consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that just eliminating parking, people are still going to go to the business, right? So they're going to have to park elsewhere. So that is a good consideration to keep in mind.
Coburn's does have a turning lane on that side.
Coburn's does.
Yep.
Yes.
Coburn's does have a turning lane.
But when that approach was built, it was built to that
They-
standard
yes.
instead of, because this intersection's been there for a long time, just the way it
Right.
is. So.
Yeah, I know Coburn's. So when we have businesses that are adding a new access point on MnDOT right away, we can require the installation of a right turn lane, which we did in the case of Coburn's if we feel that there's enough traffic to warrant that. So sometimes, like in that case, that was done at the expense of Coburn's to install that.
And on your 5-year plan, you've got no rebuild plan for the intersection. If you did, it'd certainly be nice to be able to keep that in mind. If that is at someday updated, if you're tearing the pavement up anyway, let's maybe consider widening that out.
Absolutely. Yep, we will keep that in mind. I'll ask our materials engineer who deals with the pavement structure about what the pavement structure is out there and whether or not we could accommodate any turn lanes on the existing pavement structure, if it would require a reconstruct. And then the next thing that I would do from there is have some turning movements modeled of some trucks turning and see what that would do to the radiuses at the intersection.
And again, change people's driving habits. That would be nice too, huh?
That's a tough problem.
Well, thank you, Cody.
Yeah, thank you all. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or relay those to Nick, and Nick and I will certainly discuss. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for what it's worth, I've been in a number of meetings with Cody and consultant throughout the process of doing this report, and I feel that the consultant and then as well as Cody and MnDOT did a good job with their individual pieces involved with this. So I was happy with it. All right. Moving on to my stuff for today then. We'll start with some project updates. The first update I have would be 2021 box culvert contract number 4 with RNG Construction. There's 5 crossings in there, and 4 of them are now complete. They're waiting on pipe for the last one, so it's looking like that'll be done before harvest, and I think that'll be absolutely fantastic. So I believe the culvert that cut the Valley Road off got opened back up last night, so that was probably the most critical one. So really happy that that's done now.
Nick, did you notice that there was a tile going into that culvert? Going into the side of that bridge? The guy that lives there was checking it out every day, and
Oh, okay.
he said it came right from the north down the road, went into the side of the bridge.
Okay, I'd have to look at the plans, see if we had it on there, but we look for that when we're surveying. If we find it, we absolutely throw it in there that
So
they have
did
to.
that sometime or another back in the old days, huh?
Sure. So if he was down there every day, I'm guessing our inspector would have heard about it if he didn't do it right. Okay. So, but yeah, I'll try to remember to.
He lives right south of there, so he goes for a walk every day.
Oh, I think I talked to him yesterday. Then he said he walks out there a lot. So, okay. Next update is page 2. That would be 2022 box culverts contract number 2. I have noted here that work is starting soon. Yesterday we learned that I think that work is actually starting tomorrow. So they're going to do one project kind of by island. And then that's all the pipe they will have for now, and then they'll have to come back middle of August, I believe, and work on the rest of them, so. I didn't have an update listed on this sheet, but I just learned this, yesterday that, Prame Construction, those bridges by island, I think the west one, they're setting the large beams on it today, so, if you drive by and you happen to see one up in the air, it's quite the sight to see.
How about the other bridge? I haven't seen the other bridge for a while. Where are we at with that?
It's moving along. Here's hoping August, August for both of them. He actually thinks that the one west of town will be open first,
They
but
got beams set on that one yet or not?
there's no beams on the one south of town. That'd be more of a traditional style. They just pour the pier caps and form the deck there. The one west of town met the threshold, I guess, if you will, for beams. You know, they had enough clearance, so they set the beams down and they put the deck on top of that. That'll go a little faster, but takes more room too to get that much clearance. So, they're moving along. I think they'll both be open for harvest, which is what I really, really like that. You know, feel like the farmers have been putting up with that forever around here, so it's nice when we can beat that, but it doesn't always work that way. So.
How is that township road holding up going south in the gravel?
Well, going south from there is our road.
Oh, yeah, I meant the east-west one.
The east-west road, I actually haven't been on it in probably a month, probably close to a month since I've been on it. It was doing pretty good then.
We would hear if it wasn't.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's a good point, yes.
And did you wind up putting calcium chloride down, or hasn't it been necessary?
We ordered it. I don't know if it's been done yet, but we did order it. As far as that township road goes, you know, if that needs some gravel or something due to our project, we'll take care of it. We'll help them out there, so.
And deadline, have you had any discussions with the contractor as far as deadline penalties and so forth, or have you not even had that discussion?
We haven't got that far yet. I talked with the Road and Bridge Committee about it, just to kind of start the mental process of thinking about how that's gonna work. We'll see how things end up. You know, we were really hoping that if everything went well, we'd be pretty close to Memorial Day, but now it's, you know, gonna be August with the drilling delays. Contractor didn't hesitate a bit. They took care of and paid for the detour signs, you know, to help the state park out there. So, you know, they're playing nice, you know. You know, they were there the whole time. It's not like we've had it before where they show up, tear things up, and then they leave to a different job for a while and then they come back. And that wasn't the case with the drillers. They were there the whole time. So
That means a lot.
yeah, it does to me. Because if they just left to do a different job, then I would have no sympathy whatsoever. But
Yeah.
the fact that they're there the whole time, I'm sure it cost them a lot more than they expected it to. So I want to be reasonable about that when it comes time. But I think we probably wait and see how everything finishes out before we make any decisions on that.
And I like that philosophy of being reasonable, because we have to look down the road as well too. We certainly
Yep.
don't want to give the impression that we're unreasonable for contractors come here. We want to do what's fair and fair for our people.
Yes. Yep. We want them to come back. We want them to know that we're decent, so they continue to give us decent bids, and
It takes a while to build relationships.
yeah, right. So, so my recommendation is just let's wait and see how everything turns out in the end, and then we'll talk about that. So. Next update I have is the bottom of that page, Morris Seal Coat. That project is complete. I think they called me on I don't remember when it was, but they called me and gave us about a 4-day heads up that they'd be in, and I think they were here for about 2 days and then they were gone and everything was done. It just
Is there still striping has to be done? I see some has been striped and some hasn't. How does that work?
For the seal coat or the overlays?
For the seal coating?
We told them to do it all, but there's a shortage now with the resin from some factory that makes the paint, you know, and I know like on our overlays, we tell them to do the center line striping, and then we say, we'll tell you when to do the white edge. Might mean you have to mobilize twice, but when you're shouldering, the road often gets dirty, and if you spray it when it's dirty, a lot of it peels off.
Right.
It wasn't quite as clean as I wanted to see it, but when I heard that there was that paint shortage, they said we have another load coming in June, and after that we don't know. So as soon as I heard there was that paint shortage, I just told them to go do it, because like I'd rather have a bad job than no job at all. So
Take a look, because it seemed to me that here in town on County Road 15, that north of Main Street has been striped both sides and center, and as you go south, there's not even a center line stripe going south.
well, there's a break out there, kind of by our shop, that I don't believe was striped south. If that's what you're thinking of, or
South of Main and also south of Highway 30. Nothing's been striped in there. The crosswalk was painted.
and it used to be.
I don't know, I don't remember.
I'd have to look. Sometimes you drive those roads 100 times and you don't notice those details. So, I'll check. I know there's out by our office is where it changed. I can't remember if there's anything south or if it's just that's where we started the white edge.
I think it's south all the way to Main, I think. Like I said, you drive and you don't even register.
Yeah,
Take a look and see.
I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. Will do. But so either way, yeah, they show up and they get around a lot of ground covered in just a little bit of time. So then the next update I have, which is the final update, would be with Evans Farm Drainage. They were awarded that centerline tile project, so he wasn't sure on a start date for that, but he was informed that that he was awarded that work. So
I presume they're gonna try to do that before harvest.
yes, yep. All right. Next for me, be follow up to the annual report. I passed that out, I think, a month ago. Did anybody have any questions on that?
I don't.
Okay.
It's very nice.
Okay. Well, as always, if you're looking at it later and you have a question on something, always feel free to reach out. I might not have the answer right away, but I'll get it for you. Next item I have, we've been bidding projects when we can. We put a very large construction window on them to get better prices. That usually means, like, say, for example, we might bid something, I think we did it this year even, spring of this year, but we have a completion date of next year. So they can work on it whenever they want. We had a project like that was bid last year, and now it's, they're not doing it till this year. And then they called and said, well, I bid that before fuel went crazy. Like, would you consider paying more due to the fuel? And I said, well, would we get a price reduction if it went the other way? And well, I don't know about that. So he understood, but I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll at least talk with the board about it. I don't know how we'd go about implementing a price increase, but I tend to think that we probably wouldn't get a decrease, if it went the other way. So but I'm here to talk with you and get your feelings on the matter.
My feeling is no.
Okay. That's what I figured, but I said I would ask.
I agree, we would not get a price reduction if things went the other way.
Correct.
They could have locked in their fuel price ahead of time since they had the contract. If they chose not to, it's on them, I think.
Okay.
Well, we also need to be consistent. We had this same conversation a few months ago with Van Dyke about their contract as well too, for recycling.
Oh, okay.
That was a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
Oh, Okay.
Yeah.
So again, unintended consequences, if we make an allowance for one, how that affect everything
It's
across
gonna
the board.
open
We
up a
need to
can
stay
of worms.
Need to stay consistent. We can be empathetic to them, but we have to be consistent.
Correct. Yep. I feel like in the past there was something in the MnDOT spec book called the fuel escalation clause. I never looked into that. I don't know if that's a requirement or just an option, but if that would happen to get re-implemented, we might have to deal with it.
But it's one thing if it's in the contract, but if it's not,
Yeah, and I don't remember how that worked in the past. We never had to use it. I just remember it coming out for stuff like this. But that might have been short-lived. I don't remember, but just so you know, it might be something we have to do. If it becomes that, I'll come
hope
back.
not, 'cause
Mr. Chairman,
Me too.
when I was on the Elmer Township Board, we had a fuel clause with the grader. And it worked great because we knew when we started, he would do it this work for this when fuel was this much. If it went up 50 cents, we kicked in some more. But like you say, that was in the contract to start.
Sure.
We know that we might have to do that in the future when they,
Especially when you bid a year out.
well, and then if you don't want bids that are double what they're supposed to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like the hospice house, but
Maybe you should check into that fuel clause.
the mandatory one, or the
Yeah,
Minnesota, whatever on.
I don't think there's anything to worry about right now. I just wanted to let you know that okay, that's your feelings today. That's what I'll tell them. But just so you know, we might have something pushed on us that we don't have an option on. And that's what I meant with that clause. So I'll let you know if that's the case. Otherwise, I'll relay the feelings like, well, or no.
And as you may be aware, of course, the IRS mileage rate just changed from 58.5 to 62.5. Excuse me. So I would think that would have some bearing on their business, but also on their business model. I'm sure that they've got factors built into their business model to adjust for those losses. They can absorb some of those losses.
And they're no different than us. They probably contract their fuel way ahead of time too.
Yeah, I don't know how any of that works. I just said I'd come talk about it. So, yeah. Okay, well that's what I'll say for now then. So, all right. Well, next that leaves me with our 5-year plan presentation. All right, so every year, as you're aware, we do a 5-year plan. This helps us to, we plug in our expected allotments, and this helps us get the most out of our money, see what we can all get done in a timely manner. So we modified last year to, every year there's quite a few adjustments on there. We try to, when we can, try to group projects in certain locations to help with mobilization costs too. So, instead of highlighting changes, I think it's probably easier to just go over every year and show you what we're up to here. So, starting with 2022, we did a seal coat project. Then we have a number of overlays. We did a number of overlays. County roads 1, 6, 8, 10, and 56. We have a bunch of bridge and culvert work going on. County Road 2 and 20. Also have box culverts on County Road 4. Township culvert. County Roads. Yeah, Sweet Township culvert project there. Then County Roads 55, 61, 63, 70, 83, and 89. 2023, we're looking at another group of overlays. County Road 2, 5, 7, 13, 15, 20, and then County Road 30, which is Hiawatha. We have another big year in box culverts planned. County Road 7. This one I'll really like to see go because that's a restricted bridge, and the haulers like to, over dimension haulers like to use that road to get around Pipestone. We have a lot of manufactured homes coming through the county, so this one will be really nice to get out of there. Also, we have scheduled projects on County Road 54, 2 on 75, 1 on 79, 1 for Troy Township, 2 for Altona Township, and 1 for Etna Township. 2024, we're looking at another seal coat project, another large group of overlays. County Road 2, 11, 12, 2 projects on 16, 1 on 18, County Road 23 in Ruthven, 24 in Holland, 92 in Ruthven, and then 94 in Holland. Box culverts, we're looking at 2 for Altona Township and 2 for Troy. And then 1 on our County Road 81, which is the start of the county ditch. 2025, I think we can finally fit in our County Road 10 reconstruction project that keeps getting delayed. Those people have been waiting a very long time, and it is in desperate need of a lot of work. So I'm really happy about that, really excited about that, and it really needs to happen. So also looking at overlays on County Road 4, 13, a large federal project on 18, and then 59 through Trotsky. Also more box culverts, 2 on County Road 10, 3 on County Road 15, 2 south of town and 1 up by Verdi. 2 for Sweet Township, 1 for Elmer, 1 for Eden. 2026, we'd be looking at another seal coat project, an overlay on County Road 1, and then County Road 17 through Edgerton up by the by those curves there. Box culverts, we'd be looking at extending the box culvert on County Road 25 to prepare us for the reconstruction project out there. 1 for Fountain Prairie, 1 on County Road 53, and another on County Road 77. Also projects still on our radar that we'll do as soon as funding becomes available. Be our County Road 25 reconstruction plans past John Deere, and then County Road 17. We still plan to tile that out and add a bunch of gravel to beef that road up and get that in better shape. So, with that being said, currently this 5-year plan has us about $2 million short. Or we're about $2 million short of funding it all. But last year we were about 4.7 short. So we're moving in the right direction. So the reasons for the funding shortfall, we got hit with the COVID reduced miles, less gallons sold, so less gas tax paid. Then also in the early 2000s, as you'll see on that graph, we did a large number of overlays, and then, you know, about that 15 to 20 year window, they're all coming due. So we have a massive overlay need now. So once we get kind of over the hump of that, you know, we'll be in much better shape then. So some other notes I have there. I expect our funding to return closer to normal. I would say it's about there now. I feel we're about, you know, roughly back to where it should be. Then I talked about that overlay age there in the bubble. I think it's possible we might end up with some type of stimulus money that would help out with our shortfall. And then that 220,000 from that hospital levy is really, really helping out. So I think if we continue to do that, we'll be sitting in pretty good shape. So with that being said, any questions? I guess that's.
Any questions?
Chairman, you have Edgerton on your radar too yet for when they start the big project in Edgerton?
Yep. Yeah, I guess I didn't add that here. They've
We don't know where to add it because they don't know what year it's gonna.
right. But I maybe should have had that with the whole.
I'll remind you again.
That sounds good. I'm sure they will too. What Dallas is referring to is Edgerton is going to do a large infrastructure project. Part of that will be on Main Street, and that is our road. It'll be about the time that road we'd be considering it for an overlay. So we're gonna throw some money in on that then, as far as we'll help out with the surfacing.
Edgerton does everything underground and you do the top, right? That's what.
Or at least part of the top. We'd have to decide like if we would limit it to our overlay or the full depth, so that's a decision to be had, but I know we'll have to put some money into that. So the timing's going to work out pretty well. They're going to tear it up about the time we would do an overlay anyway. So,
But we don't know when that is yet, or
it's fairly soon.
Working on it, and
Yeah.
they did all the engineering for it,
Yeah.
so it's the project is moving ahead.
Yeah.
But they're going to start on the south end of town and replace sewer system and things like that. So you start at the back, where it's where it all ends, and then work north and whatever.
okay.
But they're not going to do the whole main street at one time either. They're going to stop at the old bank corner, not the new bank. So people can get at the businesses, and then
Sure.
They've it's in phases, I believe, last I saw, and I'm sure I could dig out somewhere where they had an approximate date on it, but I don't know, when you're planning that far out and prices are that volatile, stuff moves around, for when you have funding available. So but yes, we will be involved with that in some capacity. So
thanks, Nick.
yep. As far as that goes, something I would like to look at is I think it might be easier to pay them, give them like the overlay money and like the money we would have spent on engineering ourselves and have their consultant do it. 'Cause it eliminates some duplication of work, because like say they've already got the base for plans done, and they might have some survey stuff done, and then then we're not spending time doing that. So I think it for sure makes sense to look at it, and it'll probably make sense to offer that to them. But I want to look at that and think about that a little bit more before I have a recommendation on it. But it'll be something along those lines, I think. So. Any more questions on the 5-year plan, or do we usually have a motion to make that official? I can't remember.
Okay. One other question: the culverts on 18, they're just going to get a patch tar over now until
They're gonna stay gravel because I'd like them to go through a freeze thaw, because we tried patching some other ones and we ended up ripping the one out. It got so bad,
But are they going to stay gravel till 2025?
I don't think that's probably going to be possible. I think there's so much traffic out there. Yeah, if we can get through one freeze thaw
Yeah.
cycle, that would be.
Yeah, and then patch tar it or whatever.
We'll probably have to do that. Yeah, we have it might be nice to lump it in with one of the other overlays, but I think that'd be 2 years before we're in the area.
That's a federal one too, you said.
And could be.
County State Aid, CASA 18, federal it says.
Right, but we have that Valley Road in 2024.
That's
That 2 miles. I don't know if it can wait that long. We might find out with all the traffic out there, it's just such a disaster. We might, if we're out there every other day blading it, like that's probably probably not cost effective anymore to do that, but I'm really focusing on the end product here, and I know it's no fun putting up with gravel patches, but it allows for the settlement, I think, to happen sooner and be done better. And then when we patch them, you know, the end product that we're left with forever is I feel usually better. So
The road past the golf course is nice now that you did that way.
right. It can be very painful putting up with the patches in the
I
meantime.
had
But
several calls about that road, but
yeah,
it's
when
turned out nice.
when you get past that little window up front of dealing with the gravel, you know your end product is generally better, and you know that goes on. That lasts a lot longer than a year or two of inconvenience. So it's not that we don't care. It's it's that we're looking at the long-term product. So yeah, we
Chair, I'd move to approve the 5-year plan.
I'll support that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
all right. Maintenance updates for the last month. It's been just pretty straightforward, graveling, blading mainly. So not much exciting to report there. Side note, if you recall, our AutoCAD and Civil 3D got switched to subscriptions. We can't just buy it anymore and own it. So what we're doing, you're gonna see a odd bill come through for our AutoCAD. We're getting it prorated, so that comes due at the same time as our Civil 3D. So we're only dealing with a salesman once a year instead of twice. Save us a little bit of time. So it'll probably look less than last year, but don't think the price has gone down. It's just because it's prorated back. So that's just an FYI there. Outside of that, I guess that's all I had for today. Anybody have any other questions for me?
Any questions for Nick?
Thanks, Nick.
Well, thank you, Nick.
All right, sounds good.
Take 5. We'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll reconvene. Next up, we have the resolution for the sale of the property, the old landfill.
Steve, were you gonna present on this?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that resolution is required by state statute per domain. The same type of resolution we did for the North Hiawatha property as well. It needs to accompany and be part of the record of the sale and part of the deed documents. So the recommendation would be to have the board approve that resolution, please.
Mr. Chair, I will move that we approve resolution number 592722 for the sale of the former landfill property.
I will support that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
And then, do the next resolution for the Department of Human Services.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve that.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. And on that, if Les, you could sign that right away. There's 3 copies there. Sign that, please, and then when I get back tomorrow, I'll sign it and send it right off to Prime West.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You bet. Thank you.
And then, as long as you're on the phone, we'll just talk about ACE, Steve.
Okay, sounds good. What I had in there is why this is coming up now and not as part of the budget meetings is that I corresponded with Michelle by email, and she said that she would like to know what the county's position is by July 15th, and we don't meet again until the end of the month on the 26th. So that's why I put it in your packet if the board wanted to discuss going forward with this proposal to add the RSVP program through ACE to Pipestone County. I know we've been in that twice over the past many years, I guess, and had the different boards for different reasons had decided to cancel those agreements. It appears as I'm reading through this is that we would be responsible for paying $53,925 for the years 23 and 24. And looking at her information she gave me as she puts forward her portfolio for grants, that wouldn't get there until the fall of 24, and then their fiscal year starts in 25. So for the years 23 and 24, it appears to me that we'd be paying the $53,925, and then in 25, when the grant came through, I think if I remember correctly, we'd be around the $25,000 a year difference. So for the next 2 years, we'd have that approximately $53,000 amount to pay out of the budget.
54.
So I just wanted to get the board's feeling if you think that's a valuable program that we should be looking at again, or what you're thinking.
Open it up for discussion.
Was anybody on the board when we left it last time?
I don't believe so.
None of the current members? I know in the figure that, the picture they showed us left, we're the only carve out in all the counties around us, that we're not,
Yeah.
only one that's not in it.
I think we've been in it a couple times.
A couple times in the past, but it was before any of us were on.
Okay.
I do think it's a benefit to the county.
I think it's a very valuable service, and I think the need's gonna be growing, because we have a growing elderly population. I mean,
And Steve and I have talked about housing for one person. We think we can come up with an office out at the mental health building, right, Steve?
Yes, yeah, we would certainly have room for one office out there for this person. And in the meantime, if we put this in process and we started it the first of next year, we would probably have to put that person, if we're still under work out there, in a office in the courthouse, and we could find a location down in the area where the passports are, where Matt from Prime West was there. So we could certainly find a location temporarily at the courthouse. At this time, I'm just asking for if the board wants to include it in the 23 budget or forgo it. That would allow, again, Michelle to put us in the system so that she could add us to the grant for their, what she called the Caregiver Services Grants Program that she put forth. And she says that deadline for the grant is July 29th of this year.
And I would assume that's a yearly process, so we would have to wait a year.
It sounds like it, yes.
So does she need a firm commitment then by July 15th, or does she just need a tentative agreement at this point?
Tentative agreement at this time.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that we certainly need to be involved in this.
I don't have a problem with it either. I think it's good for the community.
Yeah.
it is.
I'll
Do we
make
need
a motion.
Steve?
I'll ma-
Yes, yeah, I'd request a motion to go ahead and allow me to add this to the 2023 budget, and then we'll have it for discussion too.
Luke, did you want to make that a motion?
I can.
Then I will second it.
Okay, all in favor of the motion presented to go ahead with this?
Aye.
Alright,
Opposed?
Excuse me.
Motion carries, Steve.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and let her know that then, that we're gonna, at this point, tentatively put it in the 2023 budget.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay. Personnel, Kathy.
I did give you a summary of what I'm presenting today for the personnel. I am looking for approval to approve Eric Osfort's resignation effective July 7th, so it is retroactive. He let us know a while ago he was gonna be leaving, but he didn't know an exact date for a while, so that's why it's a little bit retro. He is moving on to, the state patrol. That's his reason for leaving, so. Would be seeking a formal approval of his resignation.
I will make that a motion to approve his resignation.
I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, next I have some hiring updates. So we are seeking approval to hire Nate Stoll as the highway maintenance superintendent. And that would be retroactive to July 1st. And the reason being for that is he is our intermittent foreman for the highway department. So he gets a little extra stipend. It's to cover for the maintenance superintendent in their absence. And he has basically been acting as the maintenance superintendent since Cullen Clipper left. We completed interviews the end of June and did make him a tentative offer pending board approval on June 30th for an effective date of July 1st. So I'd be seeking approval of Nate's appointment to highway maintenance superintendent July 1st on step D of the pay plan.
Move for approval.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Next I have a announcement and recommendation for hiring Rachel Davids as the full-time deputy recorder on the front of the pay plan, step A, starting July 25th, 2022.
I would move that we approve that recommendation for Rachel Davis.
I will second it.
Can you give us any background on?
Sure. So she actually also worked at the First State Bank Southwest for the last 8 years as a customer service representative and assisting the mortgage and loan officers.
Okay.
So she has worked with Emily before.
Yes. Yep.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't have to break in a new face.
Right.
They kind of know each other's
Oh, yeah.
habits. Did you?
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, and then since we now have a vacant full-time deputy sheriff spot with Eric's resignation, Ryan Bridgewater has been a full-time jailer dispatcher with us for several years. I should have looked up his hire date, but he recently went back to school for law enforcement and got his degree in May, and he is post-licensed now. And he did fill out an application. They were maybe going to start him as a part-time, but they are looking to hire him as a full-time deputy sheriff with that opening coming up on step E of the pay plan. And that his start date isn't firm yet. That is going to be pending all background requirements being met, which we don't foresee being an issue. But so I'd be seeking that, and then we're going to have another full-time jailer dispatcher opening. So
I'll make that a motion to approve Ryan Bridgewater.
Yep, and I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Let me comment that I think that we're very blessed with our department up there, and it really speaks volumes of it that we've got people moving up in their careers and so
Right.
forth. So it makes a lot of work for Kathy getting people and Steve getting people onboarded, but we appreciate what you're doing. And
it is nice when they can, and then it's nice when they have the background of the jail too,
Yes.
when they become a deputy, because then they
Yeah.
see the full picture of everything. So.
absolutely.
Okay. Did you guys vote on that one?
Go ahead. Yeah, we
Vote on that
voted.
one? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Last thing I have.
Yes.
Even.
Okay. Last thing I have is another position that we're going to have coming open, and Joyce did budget for a new appraiser this year, and I think she budgeted for the full year, so we're actually already halfway through the year and going to be looking to hire an appraiser. And in the meantime, we needed to update it to really capture what the requirements are as far as their licensing requirements, because that's really important for the assessors and the new Minnesota Department of Revenue licensing requirements. We did, look through some sample job descriptions, and both Chris McChesney, our deputy assessor, and Joyce looked through this and went over it with me, and we feel comfortable with the changes. We don't think this is gonna require it sending in for regrading, so this would just be an update to the job description to make sure it's accurate for posting. In the meantime, we also updated the assessing tech just to include that training requirements as well. So we're just updating that one. We're not hiring an assessing tech at this time. We're just updating that job description at the same time.
That's why I was confused. I didn't understand now, is there a difference between an assessing technician and a deputy assessor? Is that two different positions?
Yes, so our entry-level front office person, who is Liz Wenzel, she is our assessing technician.
Okay.
And then the appraisers would be Kim Murphy, Lisa Braun are our two appraisers. Kim is at the junior level, Lisa's at the senior level because she has her AMA.
And that's the only difference in that is the one's got the 2-year certification, the other's got the 5-year certification. That's the difference between junior.
Basically, it's the certification level is the difference between the junior and the senior, because they all need to get to that AMA level now. So they all basically have to be on the career track to move from a junior to a senior appraiser.
And the AMA is a 5-year program versus a 2-year program.
So it's actually, it doesn't have to, we're asking them actually to get it within 4 years. The statute is within 5 years of getting their CMA, but that's putting them out to roughly 7 years to get licensed, and that's just too long for the county to wait for someone to get licensed. So it's basically, they need to get their CMA first, which they need to get within 2 years of hire, and then they have 2 more years to get their AMA. So 4 years of initial hire date, they would need to get their AMA. And then that is as far as they need to go, is the AMA certification. Unless you want to be a county assessor, then you have to get the SAMA. So that's the Senior Accredited Minnesota Assessor. But as far as like appraising and reviewing properties around the county, the AMA is where we need everyone to be at for all of our staff.
And the SAM is an extra 2 years, or?
SAMA is another, it's another couple classes and a narrative and a test, I think. So, and yes, they factor in years of experience. I don't know off the top of my head how many years of experience, but that is all included in the designation when they're eligible to apply for their license. They look at how many years of experience they have. So
Need action to approve this?
yes, please.
Move to approve the job descriptions.
I will second, and that's for both.
Yeah.
Both descriptions.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else, Kathy?
No, we'll just be starting to advertise for this appraiser position along with this, so, which has been approved through the budget process.
Tell the newspaper people that.
And where's that out on the scale?
As far as, it's on B23 of the scale, and I can let you know what that is, just 1 second here.
Okay, I think the only thing we have left is committee reports then. Luke, would you care to start?
Sure. On Thursday the 16th, I was at the Casey Jones Trail annual meeting. Since Chris couldn't make it, Dan did a good job grilling, and I made a case again that we think it's foolish for the DNR to pave across gravel roads. Of course, they don't claim they can't do anything about it, but at least it was brought to their attention again. On the 21st, union negotiations at the hospital with Les, and they have since approved that contract. On the 28th, we, Road and Bridge Committee met, and we also had the hospital board that day. On the 29th, Highway 23 Coalition met. Their new website's progressing along. I think they're getting close to getting that done, and then we did move one of their signs to the detour route, which is, I don't know if any of you have been on that detour going to St. Cloud yet, but, you know, between Paynesville and Richmond, it's lengthy, about 20 miles out of the way, and some of the roads have got some pretty steep ditches with no shoulders, so hopefully nobody will get distracted and it'll roll over. On the 7th, Area 2 and RCRCA met. At this point, well, as of the end of June, they had nearly 38% of that dredging project done, which was over 250,000 cubic yards removed from the Lake Redwood so far. And then yesterday we had the plant ops meeting at the hospital. That's about all I have.
Dan?
I've actually got 2 months worth to report on. Again, my apologies for not being able to make the last 2 meetings. I was involved with our executive search committee for SMOC, and we have made progress on that. In fact, we got an offer out to an individual, so we're working on getting that finalized. So let me run back to May then, if I may. On the 2nd, I had my Southwest Health and Human Services Personnel Committee up in Marshall, and there again, that was working with the union negotiations and so forth on it. We talked about that before. On the 12th, I had Pipestone Area Coalition. Also in regards to coalition, as you know, I had been approved for out-of-state travel for the Montana Institute in June because of scheduling things, because of weather out there with Yellowstone and so forth. It just made more sense for me to Zoom that, so I did not go to it. I did Zoom, though, for those 4 days, the 21st through the 24th. Got to be long days sitting on Zoom. On the 13th then of May, I had my Southwest 18 Mental Health Consortium. And again, Luke Como has been attending those as well too, in discussion about where our coverage is at. Same things as far as providers and so forth, and the finances of it, and where we're at with reimbursement rates. So on the 18th, back up to Marshall in for our regular monthly Southwest Health and Human Services Board meeting. Working on procurement, also working again with Prime West, and again, appreciate the fact that we had all the support, unanimous support from this committee then to go forth with the resolution with our lawsuit then against DHS. And again, just to clarify that Prime West will be using their reserves to pay for those legal fees. It won't be coming out of the Pipestone County budget at all. On the 20th, then we had our solid waste committee meeting over in Slayton, that day. I'm sure you reported on that previously. Also on the 23rd, then our Rural Minnesota Energy Board, we had that over in Slayton as well too. Again, working with transmission lines, you know, same thing that we've been working on before. Then on the 26th, we had a building and grounds meeting here, and we dealt with, as you know, the property that we're doing the work on out there, the old mental health building. So that brought me to June. Then on the 1st, we had our Explore Southwest Minnesota meeting in Slayton. The first time we've met since the pandemic, so it was nice to get that group organized and going again. So a lot of work to do on that. On the 9th, Southwest Health and Human Services, again, Personnel Committee. On the 10th, Southwest Mental Health Consortium. Southwest Mental Health. I don't know why I put down Worthington. That should be Slayton. Okay. On the 13th, we had another building and grounds meeting here, and also I had a meeting, interviews then on the 13th with our executive search then for SMOC. 15th was Health and Human Services regular meeting. 16th, our Casey Jones annual meeting. Thank you. I think we served, only about 30 people, I think 35 people. So our attendance was down a little bit, but the weather was pretty brutal and kind of an obscure place to find, wasn't it?
It was very challenging to find.
Yeah. One of the ironic things is there's a sign there in the trailhead there, and that sign was the original sign, and it was, in fact, it was a little bit discouraging to look at the sign from back then as far as where the trail was and what's paved and what's gravelled. Not much has changed over the last 20 years. I think that sign's been up there, so hoping that we get some more momentum going, get some things done on this. There's a lot of enthusiasm right now. So On the 20th, then, again, I had my regular monthly meeting with Smock in Worthington, and then on the 28th, had another personnel meeting. And on the 29th, we had our Southwest Health Human Services personnel meeting, and then I had another building grounds meeting here, so that includes my May and June.
Thank you. Dallas.
June, a couple of these aren't official meetings, but we went to the museum for an exhibition opening. That was a fun thing to do. I took my grandchild with me. 7th of June, I went to Sioux Valley Energy annual meeting in Sioux Falls to fly the flag of Pipestone a little bit. 9th was AMC district meeting. 13th was Board of Equalization. 14th, regular meeting. 15th, Plum Creek Board meeting in Slayton. They're hoping to go to 4 10-hour days to get their 40 hours in because there's a lot of travel involved. The director lives in Sioux Falls, so she's got to drive every day. They said we'll have somebody there every day, so it won't be like Monday through Thursday and then close. So they're going to work that out internally, who stays and who gets to take Monday off or Friday off.
So not just offer personnel, but they'll also have providers available then as well, too.
Yeah. So, and we approved that for them. So instead of some other arrangement or losing somebody, the 28th regular meeting and the hospital board meeting. So that was my June.
Okay, thank you. On June 2nd, we had Prime West, and wasn't a lot to come out of that meeting outside of they talked about the legal suit. It was about
The lawsuit has really dominated what we've been doing.
Right. And then on the 6th, I had a meeting with Western Mental Health and Health and Human Services, trying to get Pipestone County and Rock County, which is part of Health and Human Services, into Western Health to put all their people in the same basket instead of 2 different areas. And hopefully something transpires out of this. But I've also gotten some emails, are there other options available?
That's become more important too now with the advent of the expansion counties from Prime West joining as well too. So it's nice to get us a little bit more together.
And then on the 7th, we had union negotiations at the hospital. On the 8th, had personnel meeting, and then Southwest Mental Health in Laverne that night. On the 10th, we had an insurance meeting at the hospital. On the 13th, plant ops and building and grounds meeting. On the 14th, commissioners meeting. 15th, Southwest Mental Health. On the 20th, I had Southwest Pick and Marshall, and some of the numbers that they throw out for unemployment. I think the one I got was Pipestone County, 1.8% unemployment, which seems really low.
But those are only people eligible for unemployment.
Right. Right. And Laverne, or Rock County, I should say, if you take all the regions around, Laverne is always the lowest. And I think that's because of being so close to Sioux Falls and on the interstate. And then on the 21st, we were back at the hospital for negotiations, and we settled a contract, and it has been ratified.
It's a
And
little bit disheartening, the email I got from the Minnesota hospital, or the nurses group. I mean, they were throwing mud. It's a shame that it has to be that divisive from the state organization when our local people were able to ratify the contract. And you know, they made the reference about having to work extra hours and so forth, and that's only happened once in how many years here?
3 years.
Yeah.
One person.
And according to that email, it sounded like we were just being taskmasters with it.
Yeah.
When I read the 11th one, I figured that they were pretty much just signed their name to an
Yep.
email. They weren't original emails. So.
You can't believe some of the tactics.
Yeah.
Okay, then, on the 22nd, I had executive radio board, that was a Zoom meeting. The full board meets every other month, and the months in between, the executive board meets, that's always by Zoom.
Yep.
Just because of mileage and time. And then on the 27th, I had an extension meeting. 28th was commissioners meeting and hospital. And on the 29th, we had a building and ground meeting, and we met out at the Southwest Mental Health Building. Went over some plans and decided that what they were gonna do wasn't gonna work the best, so it's back to our original plan.
I think it's firming up very well.
Right.
Too. Yep.
They wanted a great big conference room about the size of this room.
Yep.
And then when they got to looking at taking the one room, it wasn't big enough to get the offices in that they thought they could get in the space. When they started measuring, well, this isn't gonna work.
So it really worked out well to have all the principals involved
Right.
there to walk through it and look at it. And
Yep.
at one time they talked about moving the conference room from the north end of the building to the
Right.
south end of the building. So that's not, there's not
Yeah,
practical.
taking out 4, 5 offices.
Yeah. Bill came up with a real excellent idea, and that was with the hallways and the ceilings, of course, with the ductwork and the CAD 5 that we need to run. It makes perfect sense to go ahead and put a drop ceiling in there instead of working up in that attic trying to run ductwork. Put a drop ceiling in there. It's gonna really work well.
So everyone is on board then for the original plan, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I really think so. That the northeast conference room, we're still going to probably take out that wall that goes between that conference room and the reception area, and then put in a couple other little small walls there to make 2 offices out of that and still have that
3.
reception. 3. That's right, 3.
What about that little wall where there's a window as you come in?
Just gonna block that window off.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna make
That
that
wall
kind of
cannot
the
be
inside of your
removed,
storage.
'cause
Yep,
The transition, everything braces off that wall.
yep.
Dan and I, a couple months ago, we climbed up in the attic and just looked.
Yep, trying to find out where that supporting beam is at.
Sure.
And I guess that's the end of my report, so.
So then they won't have to add windows or?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
they'll still
we're
be
gonna
having
add-
windows.
Have to still.
Yep.
I think 3 windows.
I believe so. It's gonna be in that main conference room. I think there's gonna be 2 going to the east and 1 to the north, because there'll be those 3 new offices in there.
Instead of, they want to put a door in there,
Not a doorway.
No
it'll
door,
be a window now.
no door going to the north.
That sounds better.
And of course, you know that, the tiling has been done, and you know, of course, that the fiber
Did that
optic,
to the north,
they, all the way around, they did the tiling all the way around the building.
right, but then ran it along that north edge.
Right.
Oh, to the street, yep,
Yep.
yep.
Perfect.
And of course, the fiber optic is installed now as well too, so
Good.
making good progress on it.
Do you think that'll get done yet this year?
I think before winter will be moved in. It's just my own perception. We haven't really, depends on the contractors, you know, that we're going
Well,
out.
Well, and if you can get
Availability of the-
supplies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And time schedules are tight too.
Yeah.
Everybody's so busy. There's been so much jumping around.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't finish this, we're waiting for materials, let's go here.
Yeah.
You know,
But aren't windows still hard to get?
well, the windows
Or not so bad?
were what? At the
6
time,
months out.
12 weeks out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Wayne-
Sometime
Wayne-
in August, I think, for the windows.
Oh.
You gotta almost have the windows to start anything.
But I don't know if they've even been ordered yet. I don't know.
Well, I thought they were
Are
ordered.
they? Okay,
They were ordered shortly after we agreed to the contract.
okay, good.
Back in May, I think, wasn't it?
I know the air conditioner, the furnace air conditioners were.
Steel is easy to come by. We're fixing the shed damage.
Oh, yeah,
It's an order Friday, they can have it Tuesday, so.
good.
Anything else come before the board today?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Stand adjourned.